Emma and Simon from Papanui-Innes-Central. Welcome.
Kia ora koutou. Thank you for having us along today to speak to our Waipapa Papanui-Innes-Central Community Board submission on this year's annual plan. First up, we would like to acknowledge the work that has been put in by you as councillors and also staff to get us to this point in the process, and also to acknowledge the difficult task that you have in front of you. I'm sure you will hear a lot throughout these hearings about the difficulties residents are facing during these tough times, and we would like to reiterate that the costs to our ratepayers must be at the forefront of your minds throughout this process. We commend you in getting the rates increase down to the level that you have, and know that while any increase will be challenging on ratepayers during this cost of living crisis, there is still a necessity to maintain levels of service and the upkeep and improvement of our city whilst absorbing cost increases. Regarding the overall capital program, we are supportive of the priorities you have outlined in the draft. Roading and footpath condition as well as flooding are two of the things that we hear most from our residents about, so we are especially pleased to see these at the top of the priority list. Hand over to Simon.
Thank you. On transport priorities in the capital program, with the downstream works related to the Northern Corridor, remains a priority for our board, and we ask the council to keep a focus on that work. There's issues of compliance around that, of course, associated with the resource consent for the project, but also amenity for our residents and our St Albans residents in particular, who are most impacted by that, and we're continuing to work through some of the detail of that with community now. Some things that we wanted to signal, but also to request may be possible to achieve through existing programs, so not a ask for extra money or new money, but simply some priorities within existing budgeted programs. Concern for the board is Springfield Road and pedestrian safety in particular. It's a long stretch of road from Beeley Ave North. There are no safe pedestrian crossings at any point along that road, and there's a number of community facilities and sort of points of population movement through there. Our cycleway program, the ask from the board across that whole program, and we'll come to this a little bit more on the next slide, is to continue the momentum on our cycleway projects, our major cycle routes, but also the smaller works, the connections and local routes and so on. And for our active transport initiatives across our whole city, continuing to promote walking, cycling, public transport, including considering rail as an option, particularly for access from the north of the city, again, where we're so impacted by vehicle traffic. And I must say I took a lovely passenger train from Christchurch to Rangiora last weekend. It was a one-off special, but it would be amazing if it wasn't just a one-off, if there was a facility there that gave people another option in addition to the existing modes that they can utilise.
So a wee bit more now on the cycling, which our board is supportive of. We're supportive of these particular projects being retained. The top one there is the Northern Line, which links the Unicycle cycleway with Belfast. It's a very important link. There's funding on budget for the urgently needed signalised crossings at Harewood Road, Langdons Road and Sawyers Arms Road, as well as the missing section between Tuckers and Starricks Road and the completion right through to Main North Road. We also support the local cycleways project that's listed there. This provides some of the much needed infrastructure through what is currently a large gap in the northeast of the city, as well as supporting stage 3 of the Norwest Arc, which is due for construction this year. And then with regards to the proposal to defer starting construction on the Wheels to Wings cycleway, our board suggests that this is at odds with the council's stated priority in the draft annual plan of completing the major cycle routes so we can deliver long-standing commitments and make the most of government subsidies that may not be available later, which is on page 20 of the consultation document. We note that this project has already been through 2 rounds of public consultation, a hearings panel process, and subsequently been approved by the council. Our board believes that the council needs to deliver on its long-standing commitment to deliver this cycleway and give cyclists a safe option for travelling along this route.
Those of you who were here last term will recall that Emma and I have spoken a number of times around the issues associated with growth and traffic on the Langdons Road corridor. There's two projects, one mentioned on this slide at the top there, the Greers Langdons Road traffic lights. There's also Project 243, which is the Greers Northcote Sawyers intersection upgrade. Both of those are proposed to be pushed out in the draft annual plan, and we understand there are impacts associated with deliverability with the SURF projects as well. That projects do need to get moved around. The Greers Northcote Sawyers, it's been on the long-term plan for a long time, and there is a need and expectation for the community for that work to be done. So our ask on that is that it move no more than is absolutely necessary for it to, in order for council to hit its objectives and to manage its commitments. There's also a project on the books, 61804, for a youth facility in the Papanui area. It's further out in the LTP. It's not one that's subject to any movement through this draft annual plan at this stage. We're signalling to the council that it remains a high priority for our board, and it's important to us for it to be maintained at least where it is in the LTP. And there are also other issues that we comment on, some of them specific to the Papanui area and some of them that relate to the wider area. One of our a little project that began late last year in the Northlands area is around safety around the mall, and particularly supporting our young people in that area and to utilise that space well and respectfully. And for the whole community to be safe in that area. So with some support from council as well as a couple of local youth organisations, there's been a wee safety initiative operating focused in that space, and that's something that we'll be continuing to support the community on. I would highlight on here as well, even though the slide is titled Papanui's Growing Pains, just an acknowledgement around the last bullet point on this around green space and amenities in areas of intensification, that the St Albans community in particular has seen very, very strong population growth over the recent years, and staff recently presented us with a map of our entire board area showing all our council parks and green spaces, and there's a very obvious space in the middle of our board area around that St Albans area that is not served as well with green spaces and parks as either the central area or the Papanui area. So that's an interesting consideration, something the board's giving some thought to.
As Simon said, we as a board recognise the importance of community spaces throughout our wards, especially with those the increasing intensification in certain parts. And here we have three projects which have funding set aside in the 2021 long-term plan, which we will be continuing to push for come next year's long-term plan. We're bringing them up now so that you know to keep them on your radar for the future and to highlight the work that is already being done. There will be further community engagement happening around the Shirley Community Reserve project in the coming months, along with continued community activation of the site. And we are continuing to work with the Phillipstown Community Hub around their long-term plans and the need for a permanent home, ideally on their current site.
With respect to the city vacant differential rating, this is something that impacts our board area also in the Linwood area, so the Linwood Village. We're supportive of the intent of this. Something that we really wish to flag to council is, or a couple of aspects of this. One is around the timing of the implementation of a rate on vacant land in Linwood Village. Just noting that there has been a delay to the completion of the Linwood Village Streetscape Improvement Project, and we would like to see some alignment there between what council is doing to improve the area and what council is asking of private landowners. We also consider that the Vacant Sites Improvement Guide may need to be finessed a little bit when it comes to applying it to suburban centres as opposed to the central city. And there's some feedback there from our members for Central that perhaps we're asking a little bit much of landowners currently in that improvement guide as it would apply to Linwood Village. So perhaps there's something more cost effective that can be done that can still raise the amenity in the area without burdening those landowners overly.
And finally, on water, as I said earlier, we have issues with flooding in parts of our board area, and we are highly supportive of the priority being placed on Three Waters projects in the draft annual plan. In addition to these necessary projects, we would like to see implemented a resource for residents with clear and concise information about flooding plans already in place, how council responds to weather events, when and how other agencies get involved, and possibly some kind of alert system. And then finally, regarding the excess water charges, our board supports keeping the allowance at 700 litres a day to encourage greater water conservation and to avoid any further rate increases. And now on to questions.
We got Tyler was first, and then Kelly, who was a close second, and Aaron. Yeah, if you like, mate.
Kia ora. That was a really good presentation. I appreciate that. I just want to just focus on the youth part here, and sort of, I'd like you to elaborate a bit more on the youth safety issues around the bus exchange.
So the issue that came up last year was really around the fact that in a very small area, we've got Northlands Shopping Centre, which on one side has a major public transport hub on Main North Road. Immediately on the other side of it, we've got a school with a population, secondary school with more than 1,500 students. We've also got a number of other secondary and primary schools in the area, so we have huge flows, particularly of young people in that after-school period. Around term 3 last year, there were a couple of incidents at the mall involving some young people. And at that point, sort of the flag went up and asked for help across youth organisations and council, as well as mall management. And since then, there's been a collaborative project has run. Council put a little bit of money towards that, and a couple of local youth organisations, Papanui Youth Development Trust and Te Oroho, contributed to that as well, which has resolved the immediate issue. And there's been some really positive feedback from the mall and from the participants in that. It's a little bit like a local version of the safety initiative in the central city, particularly focused in this case. My philosophy always is, and my encouragement at the time to the school when I was contacted about it, if you need to resource something to resolve an issue with young people, don't hire a security guard, employ a youth worker, and that's the approach that's been taken.
That's phenomenal, thank you. And the last question I have is around the Papanui Youth Hub. Can you talk to us a bit about that?
So it's not youth hub, but youth facility is perhaps the language we have at the moment. And this is more thinking around outdoor spaces, a place where young people can, a place that young people can occupy without the obligations that come with being in a commercial space. Papanui is a very dense sort of business and community area. It doesn't have a lot of bumping space. It hasn't got that public square, and that's, we've seen that as a real need in the area. It's something that's been raised with the board over multiple terms, even before my time on the board. I know that it was raised prior to that as well. So at the moment, the exact scope or definition of what that might be is not set, but there is some funding set aside later in the long-term plan to do something in that area.
We are really lucky. We've got some really strong community organisations working with youth in the area, so we'll be working with them and the school and following that path.
Kia ora. Thank you both very much.
Kelly.
I'll defer to next.
Okay, Aaron.
Yeah, just a couple of questions around the board's position on Harewood Road. So, did you guys engage with the public on that, or is that the board's members' position?
That was the position of the submissions working group.
Oh, so you had
Not,
feedback
but no,
from the public.
but knowing what's happened in the past and our personal knowledge and involvement throughout the process.
Right. So, was there any engagement with the public on that, on their position?
Well, I would say that this process is the public engagement. It's not our job to engage with the public on an aspect of the board's submission. It's the board's role to submit its own position, and the public will be submitting to you as well.
Right. And you comment about the Waka Kotahi funding. What funding's that?
That was a quote from the consultation document.
Oh, right. Okay. And then the other one was, do you think it's important to give priority to the local views of those most affected by a project or not?
I've got a personal view on that. I don't know if we can represent a board view on it. I would note that there's a network effect, though, from our cycle route projects, and it's important to consider the whole of the network and the completion of that.
Right, so the local view's is not more important, it's just fits in.
I think it's the role of the council to weigh all of those views.
Okay, so, sorry, Yanni, there's no time left. We've got no seconds left. So you have to forward that through to me if you want me to answer anything. So, this is not the thin end of the wedge, is it?
Yes, of course it is.
How quick is this?
I just wanted to check
Surprise me.
if the community board was supporting the deferral of the Ferry Road pedestrian crossing to the year 2026, 27, or if that was something that you wanted brought forward or done as per the...
It's not
current
something we
budget.
discussed when we were doing our submission, but we have heard from the community about the importance of that crossing. So board would be supportive of getting it done as soon as possible.
Okay, good as gold. Thank you very much for coming in. Brilliant.
Thank you.
So now we have Onuku Rungananga. Rick, welcome, mate. Good to see you again.